Mark Carney just delivered a masterclass in strategic diplomacy, and Donald Trump didn't even see it coming. While Canada's Prime Minister spoke to the U.S. President on Monday in what he called a productive conversation, Carney made it crystal clear that immediate tariff relief isn't happening. But here's the twist. This wasn't capitulation. It was calculated chess. So what exactly went down in this conversation? And why is Carney's approach driving his political opponents absolutely wild? To understand the full picture, we need to rewind to how Canada got into this tariff mess in the first place. When Trump launched his trade war earlier this year, he slapped sweeping tariffs on Canadian goods, targeting everything from steel and aluminum to automotive products. The stated goal was to pressure Canada into trade concessions, using economic pain as leverage. Canada responded with its own counter tariffs on $60 billion worth of U.S. goods, creating a classic tit-for-tat scenario that economists warned could spiral into a full-blown trade war. But Trump's strategy had a fundamental flaw. He underestimated Mark Carney's long-term thinking. While Trump focused on immediate pressure tactics, Carney was playing a different game entirely. The timing of Monday's conversation wasn't coincidental. It happened on the exact same day that Canada lifted most of its counter tariffs on U.S. goods, but only on products covered by the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, known as CUSMA. This wasn't the surrender it appeared to be on the surface. It was strategic positioning. What many don't realize is that Canada currently holds the best trade deal of any country in the world with the United States. 85% of Canada-US trade flows completely tariff-free, and the effective tariff rate with the United States sits at just 1.5%.
With the U.S. president.
Okay, well, let's go to results. Right now, we have the best trade deal of any country in the world. Okay, those are results. We think it can be better, and we're working to make it better. But to be absolutely clear, 85% of our trade with the United States is tariff-free. Nobody else is in that position. Our average tariff is about 5.5%. That's the lowest average tariff of any country in the world. So right now we have the best, but we have real issues. Without question, we have real issues in steel, in aluminum, in forest products, in autos, potentially in pharma, copper, some other sectors. So there's these strategic sectors that the U.S. has focused on where we have issues. And as well, there will be a review of CUSMA, our trade agreement with the U.S. and Mexico, starting next year. So we need to prepare for that. We need to lay the groundwork for that review, and we need to address as rapidly as possible these strategic sectors. Okay.
Despite this favorable position, real challenges remain in strategic sectors, including steel, aluminum, forest products, automobiles, pharmaceuticals, and copper. These are the pressure points where both countries are feeling the economic strain. Carney characterized his Monday discussion with Trump as lengthy and wide-ranging, covering trade, geopolitical matters, and labor issues in detail.
That's what we're doing. I last spoke, exchange messages. I last spoke to the president Monday evening. I spoke at length on a wide range of issues, including on trade, but geopolitical, other issues, labor issues, etc. It was a good conversation. We have a team. A very senior team, the clerk of the Privy Council is there in Washington as we speak, that is meeting with the U.S. counterparts. Don't expect immediate white smoke on one of these strategic sectors, but that's the type of conversation that we're having and will continue to have.
A very senior Canadian team, led by the clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Sabia, is currently in Washington conducting ongoing negotiations with American counterparts. But the key phrase came when Carney told reporters not to expect immediate white smoke on any of these strategic sectors, but that's the type of conversation they're having and will continue to have. That Vatican reference to white smoke, the signal that a new pope has been chosen, was deliberate. Carney was managing expectations while signaling that negotiations are ongoing, but on Canada's terms. What's particularly significant is that these were the first substantive discussions between Carney and Trump, after weeks of silence following an August 1st deadline.
Well, sadly, I wasn't on the other line listening in like I used to do with my sisters back in the day, though I wish I were. But what I can tell you is a couple of things. First, I'm told by people behind the scenes that the fact that these conversations are happening is a good sign, right? They didn't for a while after that August 1st deadline came and went. And now we've seen 2 conversations basically within a week. So the fact that they're talking is perceived by people in and around the Prime Minister to be a good thing. Whether that translates into a good thing for Canadians is a whole other story. I take note of the Prime Minister's comments that the bulk of their discussion, I'm paraphrasing, but the bulk of their discussion focuses now on the sectoral tariffs. That is where, as cheesy as the saying is, the proof will be in the pudding, right? If, in essence, the Prime Minister is able to negotiate lower sectoral tariffs for Canadian goods, steel, aluminum, and copper, and in the auto sector, well, that will be the win that they are looking for. But the Trump administration has shown no signs of abating on those very, very punishing tariffs, and so we remain in a holding pattern. I garner from what the Prime Minister said that is where the focus of the conversations is right now. The fact they're talking is a good thing. Whether it translates into something better for those very, very hard-hit sectors is a whole different thing.
The fact that 2 conversations have now occurred within a week is being viewed as a positive sign by those around the Prime Minister, though there's still uncertainty about whether this renewed dialogue will translate into concrete benefits for Canadians. The real genius of Carney's approach becomes clear when you look at what Canada actually did. By removing counter tariffs only on CUSMA-compliant goods, Canada essentially mirrored what the U.S. had already done. This created what trade experts call reciprocal exemptions. Both countries now treat the vast majority of each other's goods the same way under the existing trade framework. But Canada kept its tariffs on 3 critical sectors: steel, aluminum, and automotive products. These aren't random choices. They're the exact areas where Trump's tariffs are causing the most economic pain to Canadian industries. And they're also sectors where Canada has significant leverage. The steel and aluminum industries, in particular, are deeply integrated across the Canada-US border, meaning American manufacturers depend on Canadian inputs. Trump, for his part, remains committed to defending his global tariff regime. He's preparing to take his case all the way to the Supreme Court, arguing that without tariffs, the country would be in serious, serious trouble.
Today, Donald Trump showed no signs of reciprocating. The U.S. president is preparing to defend his global tariff regime before the Supreme Court.
Because without the tariffs, this country is in serious, serious trouble.
Trump standing by his trade tactics comes as one cabinet minister asserted today that despite dropping retaliatory tariffs, Prime Minister Mark Carney hasn't put his elbows down.
There's no capitulation.
This stance comes even as a U.S. federal appeals court decision has thrown his entire tariff strategy into uncertainty. Canadian officials have been emphatic in their response. When asked about capitulation to American demands, one cabinet minister's response was unequivocal. Zero, never, never. That's not happening. This firm stance reflects Canada's determination to maintain its sovereignty while engaging in productive negotiations. What makes this strategy so effective is that it puts Trump in a bind. If he wants to escalate by increasing tariffs on these sectors, he risks damaging American manufacturers who rely on Canadian materials. If he backs down, he looks weak to his domestic audience. And if he tries to expand tariffs to CUSMA-covered goods, he's essentially ripping up a trade agreement his own administration negotiated. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre saw this move completely differently. He called it yet another capitulation and climbed down by Mark Carney, arguing that Trump appeared to give no concessions in return. Poilievre claimed that if the Conservatives had formed government, he would have gone to the president respectfully and said, "You remove your tariffs, we remove ours." But this criticism reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how international negotiations actually work. Poilievre's approach, demanding immediate reciprocal removal, is exactly what Trump would expect and easily counter. It plays into Trump's preferred negotiating style of creating artificial crises and demanding immediate responses. Interestingly, while focusing on these trade negotiations, Poilievre has also been warning Canadians about what he calls Carbon Tax 2.0, the clean fuel regulations that will add 17 cents per liter to gas prices. The Parliamentary Budget Office has found these regulations to be regressive, hitting lower-income households harder than anyone else.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is warning Canadians to beware of carbon tax 2.0. Speaking in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, Poilievre says Prime Minister Mark Carney got rid of the carbon tax when he needed votes. And now that he doesn't need voters, he's bringing in a new one because, in Poilievre's words, he still wants your money.
He calls it the Clean Fuel Standard, Clean Fuel Regulations. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, it will add 17 cents a litre to your gas. What did the last carbon tax add to your gas? 17 cents a litre. The new tax is starting to look a lot like the old tax. And Mark Carney thinks no one will notice. Well, Conservatives have noticed, and that is why we are announcing today that we are making it a priority to boost take-home pay and reverse the Liberal cost of living crisis by opposing Mark Carney's Carbon Tax 2.0. We want to axe all carbon taxes for good, for real, for everyone, forever.
Meanwhile, Carney's cabinet is meeting in Toronto to focus on two main priorities. First, dealing with the U.S. trade situation and its economic impact, including major projects and budget planning. The Prime Minister has described the upcoming budget as both an austerity budget and an investment budget. Second, they're addressing domestic issues important to Canadians, such as crime and immigration, with promises of legislative action in the fall sitting. Carney's approach is more sophisticated than simple tit-for-tat responses. By removing counter tariffs on goods where both countries already had exemptions, he's demonstrating good faith while maintaining pressure points where Canada has leverage. This creates space for longer-term negotiations without appearing to cave to American pressure. The timing of this move is also strategically brilliant. Canada made this gesture just as Trump was facing increasing pressure from American businesses about the economic costs of his tariff policies. Multiple U.S. industry groups have been lobbying the Trump administration to reduce or eliminate tariffs, arguing they're raising costs for American consumers and manufacturers. By making this move now, Carney is essentially betting that Trump will face domestic pressure to reciprocate, especially as the economic costs of the trade war become more apparent to American voters. The conversation with Trump also served another purpose: intelligence gathering. Carney now has a better read on Trump's actual priorities and negotiating positions, information that will be crucial as formal trade talks continue. This two-track approach, high-level political contact combined with technical negotiations, is classic diplomatic strategy. It allows both sides to explore options without the political pressure of public commitments. The fact that the Prime Minister's office didn't immediately release a readout of the Trump conversation, something they typically do for calls with world leaders, suggests the discussion covered sensitive negotiating positions that Canada doesn't want to telegraph publicly. But perhaps the most telling aspect of Carney's approach is how it's being received internationally. Trade experts and diplomatic observers have noted that Canada is threading a very difficult needle, maintaining its sovereignty and economic interests, while avoiding the kind of escalatory spiral that could damage both economies. The upcoming CUSMA review in 2026 provides the formal framework for addressing the remaining tariff issues. Canada needs to prepare rapidly for this review, which will begin next year. But Carney has positioned Canada to enter those negotiations with most of its economic relationship with the U.S. intact, rather than from a position of economic crisis. This approach also sends important signals to other countries dealing with Trump's trade policies. By demonstrating that it's possible to maintain trade relationships while standing firm on core interests, Canada is providing a template for how middle powers can navigate Trump's unpredictable approach to international relations. The domestic political implications are equally significant. The criticism that Carney is capitulating to Trump actually highlights a fundamental misunderstanding of how modern trade diplomacy works. In an era where economic relationships are deeply integrated and complex, the old model of simple reciprocal responses is inadequate. Carney's approach recognizes that Canada's relationship with the United States is too important and too complex to be managed through simple tit-for-tat responses. Instead, it requires sophisticated strategy that preserves Canada's core interests while creating space for productive negotiations. The conversation with Trump also demonstrates Carney's understanding that personal relationships still matter in international politics. By maintaining regular communication with Trump and characterizing their discussions as good conversations, Carney is building the kind of working relationship that can be crucial when difficult decisions need to be made. This doesn't mean compromising on Canadian interests. It means creating the conditions where those interests can be effectively advocated for and protected. Looking ahead, the success of Carney's strategy will ultimately be measured by whether Canada can secure relief on the remaining tariffs, particularly in steel, aluminum, and automotive sectors, without making unacceptable concessions on sovereignty or economic policy. The early signs suggest this approach is working. Trump's willingness to engage in lengthy conversations with Carney, combined with the U.S. commitment to maintain CUSMA exemptions, indicates that the American side recognizes the value of the relationship and the costs of escalation. But perhaps most importantly, Carney has demonstrated that it's possible to deal with Trump's unpredictable approach to trade without abandoning Canada's core interests or strategic autonomy. In a world where many countries have struggled to find effective responses to Trump's trade policies, Canada's approach offers a model for how to maintain sovereignty while engaging productively with a difficult partner. The real test will come in the months ahead as formal negotiations continue and the 2026 CUSMA review approaches. But for now, Carney has successfully navigated one of the most challenging periods in Canada-US trade relations while maintaining most of Canada's economic access and preserving crucial leverage for future negotiations. That's not capitulation, that's strategic statecraft at its finest. Thanks for watching. If you want to see how other countries are dealing with Trump's trade policies, check out our other videos. And if you want to stay updated on how international trade disputes are reshaping global economics, be sure to subscribe for more in-depth analyses and breaking news.